received threatening messages and phone calls from an Israeli officer ordering him to stop his coverage or he and his family would face the consequences. Hamad's body was found in pieces and had to be collected in bags and boxes for his burial. Israel also targeted Al Jazeera journalist, cameraman Fadi al-Wahidi, who suffered a gunshot to his neck from an Israeli sniper. Wahidi was also wearing a vest that clearly marked him as press. He's currently in a critical condition. Another journalist reporting from Jabalia, Mohammed al-Tanani, was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Further south in the Gaza Strip, in Deir al-Balah, Al Jazeera cameraman Ali al-Atta was seriously wounded from Israeli fire. He's unable to get medical care because of the total siege imposed on Gaza by the Israelis. Throughout this war, Al Jazeera has condemned the targeting of its journalists by Israel. The army routinely issues denials. However, in the past few months, it has accused some reporters of being members of Hamas. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry, at least 175 journalists have been killed in Gaza. The Committee to Protect Journalists says more journalists have been killed in this war than any other conflict in the past 3 decades.
Thank you, Nick. From the outset, Israel's assault on Gaza threatened to plunge the entire region into a state of war. When Israel's defense minister announced in mid-September that the military would turn
Okay, and there's Disneyland and the Anaheim Convention Center.
Front, diverting forces to the fight with Hezbollah, few could have imagined how quickly Lebanon would be consumed. What has unfolded in just a few weeks has shocking echoes of what we have seen so far in Gaza. Thousands have been killed. More than half a dozen hospitals have been forced out of service. 1.2 million people have been displaced from their homes. The Lebanese have been subjected to constant psychological warfare from Israel, messaging that aims to intimidate and sow discord in society there. One voice helping audiences make sense of rapidly changing events is Karim Makdisi. An associate professor of international politics at the American University of Beirut, Karim, along with his brothers Sari and Osama, is also a co-host of the podcast Makdisi Street. Karim Makdisi, thank you for joining us at the Listening Post. I'd like to start with the message, or the ultimatum rather, that Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu issued this past week. He said Lebanon should free itself from Hezbollah or face, quote, the abyss of a long war that will lead to destruction and suffering like we see in Gaza. What did you make of that statement? How has that been reacted to by Lebanese society?
Yes, well, the Netanyahu statement, of course, I think it's been read in 2 different ways. On the one hand, people understand that it's part of this kind of terror campaign to try to force the Lebanese and Lebanon in general to its knees and to end up signing some kind of surrender agreement after much of Lebanon has been destroyed. People are also aware that there's a kind of propaganda element. I mean, the idea that he's speaking in English is clearly directed to the West, is clearly part of this larger Israeli kind of tactics to try to, say, oh, look, we've warned you, we've pleaded with you, we've, given you strong warnings, weak warnings, everything. And you're the ones who are not listening. So therefore, you give us no choice but to destroy you and kill you and kind of divide you up. So this is the attempt. Netanyahu and all these Israeli politicians, ever since I can remember, and going back to being a kid, up until now, up until this last year, every day or every other day or every week, we hear statements by Gallant or Netanyahu or, Smotrich basically say we're going to destroy Lebanon.
אם חלילה תתפתח פה הסלמה או אירועים מלחמתיים, אנחנו נחזיר את לבנון לעידן האבן.
Beirut, as you know, is being destroyed. Much of the south is destroyed. Large parts of the Bekaa are being attacked and destroyed. So, of course, in a sense, the idea that what's now being called the Gaza Doctrine is being applied to Lebanon is quite clear. What people are worried about is that the international community has abandoned Lebanon and that you're in this stage of kind of parapolitics where they can just destroy as much as they want at will and kind of, extend this Gaza Doctrine into Lebanon.
Indeed.
This is where we are now.
Both Israel and Hezbollah are engaging in psychological warfare online. On the Israeli side, the army's Arabic spokesperson, Avichai Adrai, he has been relentless. Can you give us a sense of what he's saying and how that is designed to make Lebanese citizens feel?
Yeah, I think it's clear that on the one hand, what he's designed to do is to intimidate and, as I said, to terrorize, which is the main Israeli kind of tactic in Lebanon these days. It's purely to try to terrorize the civilian population.
إلى سكان جنوب لبنان ديروا بالكم يستمر جيش الدفاع في مهاجمة مواقع حزب الله الإرهابي داخل قراكم وبالقرب منها.
They put up these little maps, as they did in Gaza, and here are the districts that we're going to blow up and that we're going to attack. So you have, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever, to kind of move out of this entire territory. And usually this is in the middle of the night with very, very short notice. And then they proceed to attack and destroy buildings and civilian infrastructure and entire neighborhoods. They understand very clearly the psychological idea behind kind of slowly clearing out neighborhood after neighborhood after neighborhood in Beirut and extend beyond the so-called, what they call Hezbollah areas into kind of the adjacent areas, as they've done in Gaza and as they've done in 2006 war in Lebanon, as they did in 1982. So this stuff is very old. What this spokesperson, attempts to do is to try to create a kind of psychological terror and a facade to the West in particular that they're being precise and targeted and they're getting civilians to flee.
When you observe Hezbollah's messaging to the Lebanese people, it's gone from a narrative based around a commitment to Gaza to the reality of an Israeli invasion of Lebanon. How is Hezbollah trying to shore up its support in Lebanon?
Well, I think now it's portraying itself and portraying the battle to Lebanon as an existential one. So it's true. It maintains its idea, its overall objective and idea that it will remain fighting the Israelis until there's a ceasefire in Gaza, until the genocide in Gaza ends. So that's still their official position. But yes, for now, the main issue is an existential threat to Lebanon as they see it, not just to them as Hezbollah, but to Lebanon as a whole and to the region as a whole. I think operationally, what their message to the Lebanese and especially their constituents are, as Hassan Nasrallah said before he was killed, that al-Haki bil Maidan. The talk now is really on the ground. It's in the battlefield in South Lebanon in particular. And the idea is to try to defend Lebanon with all its might from the Israeli invasion and to kind of stop it as they did in 2006 from creating a reality on the ground, which is another occupation, while trying at the same time to say that people are suffering, that their constituents in particular are suffering, and that there needs to be reconciliation in the sense of people in solidarity with each other. So I think these are the kinds of the main messages, while at the same time trying
Rotate.
to put forth that they are rebuilding their structure even in Beirut, that they've kind of understood what the Israelis are doing now and that they've addressed this, and that all the military leaders have been replaced, the political leaders have been replaced, and that they are trying to address the kind of Israeli intelligence that penetrated and caused some very serious problems to the Hezbollah structure and leadership.
Lebanon is, of course, not Gaza. There are a number of international journalists who are reporting in Beirut. Has that made any noticeable difference to the quality of international news coverage of what's happening in Lebanon?
Yes, I would say it's slightly more in the sense of it's very difficult when the Israelis are hitting civilian targets and blowing up buildings and hitting entire neighborhoods. And when you see much more than 1 million now displaced Lebanese all over Beirut and all over different parts of Lebanon now, it's easier in a sense even for Western journalists to kind of come in and do some of their human interest type stories when they talk to people and they see the level of destruction and they kind of film the destruction in ways that they're not allowed to do in Gaza anymore. In Lebanon, it's been a little bit more difficult for the Israelis to kind of portray their image that they're only targeting
Well,
Hezbollah.
this is never full of water, so I don't know what the fuck they're showing.
Are not really being attacked. I think journalists are showing this. Having said that, I think it's very, very important.
But yes, this is a damn.
Note that the structure of Western coverage of Palestine, of Lebanon, and the region in whole has been very much coming from politically from a Zionist perspective. That is, despite some of these human interest stories, it's still very clear that many Western journalists are using Israeli jargon. They kind of, falsely report about the idea of targeted killings. They falsely report about, for example, the Dahi, the southern suburbs of Beirut, being kind of Hezbollah strongholds. They falsely report about Israeli words like incursion into Lebanon as opposed to invasion, and so the overall framing tends to be quite Zionist, despite the fact that there are some good human interest type stories, and despite the fact that they can see with their eyes the kind of damage that's taking place on the ground.
And finally, Karim, some of the discourse in Israel and in the United States amongst politicians and media opinion makers, it has a very 2003 feel to it. You know, when the US launched its war on Iraq, this talk of a, quote, historic opportunity to remake the Middle East. What motivates these pronouncements? Is it delusion or is it just standard propaganda?
No, it's I don't know if it's either. It's hubris. I mean, I
It's
would take
both.
them very seriously when they say they want to create a new Middle East. As you said, in 2003, they had a long standing from the 1990s, very much from Bill Clinton onwards, to try to do regime change in Iraq. They used the pretext of September 11, 2001 to kind of operationalize, let's say, or implement the plan that they had to do regime change in Iraq, to try to reorder the Middle East by force and remove any elements of opposition to the American-Israeli project in the region. They totally destroyed Iraq. They dismembered the entire Iraqi state. There was massive resistance, huge amount of violence, many hundreds of people, hundreds of thousands of people killed and displaced and injured and refugees. That then, the plan was very clear, to spill over to Lebanon, and by doing so, destroy Hezbollah, and then get onto Syria. And then after Syria, the ultimate goal was to topple the Islamic Republic in Iran. That failed in South Lebanon, ironically, during the 2006 war. And the failure of the Israelis and even the Americans on the battleground in South Lebanon stopped that project from kind of going forth. We now see a revival of that kind of plan. We see the revival of the language, the discourse of talking about a new Middle East. Netanyahu is saying it in the way that the neocons were saying it back in 2003. You see even people, even now the Biden administration are beginning to use these words directly or indirectly. We know that the Biden administration has now lent its full support to the Israeli invasion of Lebanon. So it's a continuation of a long-standing American-Israeli policy in the region of regime change, of rather than trying to negotiate, to try to impose by force a reordering of the region in a way that they see protects Israel's interest, imposing an Israeli controlled region where there can be no opposition. We need to take them seriously. You can see going all the way back to the Nakba and before the Nakba, the long attempts to try to settle by genocide, by occupation, by displacement, by ethnic cleansing, and certainly by violence of every kind, in addition to relying on Western support. And we see now a kind of continuation of this. The idea that there should be a new Middle
Okay.
East
Let's
requires the
see.
destruction of Lebanon, regime change in Lebanon, and then Syria, and eventually this kind of attack on Iran. So this is what we see, and I think we should take them seriously.
Karim, thank you very much for speaking with us today, and thanks to you and your brothers for the work that you do with your podcast.
Thank you.
The
Oh my gosh. Okay. I mean, this thing doesn't have any cords or anything like that, so. Oh shit. I'm basically flying the freeway. Oh, I'm gonna crash. Okay. Bro, okay. Looks okay. Okay. This is the part where I'm like, eh. The shit should be dry, homie. But at least the water looked kind of real. Not really. Vale, vale, vale. Mhm. Okay, these are the fishing lakes, I think. Yep.
Ten major reasons why you shouldn't move to Belize. Hi guys, my name is Giselle and I'm a local here in Belize. I am also a real estate agent and I've seen thousands of people come to Belize and I've also seen them leave Belize. And I will share with you the top 10 reasons why people leave. Number one, there are no shopping malls. To some people, this might be extremely frustrating. They miss their, I don't know, Louis Vuitton. I don't know, they're probably just addicted to shopping and they just really miss it. Well, we have no shopping malls here. If you want to shop, you can head over to Cheddar Mall, Mexico. But you're probably gonna see brands that you're not really familiar with, like Shasa, Hang Ten. People tend to gravitate towards the shopping malls that they're used to. All right, number 9. There are no fast food chains in Belize. You are not gonna find any McDonald's, In-N-Out, Whataburger. What else is there? Burger King. None of that exists in Belize, okay? We do have a super sub, what is it? I think super subs where you can buy Subway sandwiches, but that's kind of about it. Number 8, there is very limited regulation in Belize. This is a good thing and a bad thing because it means that barrier to entry is very low, like it's not highly regulated, but also when you're trying to get things executed, there is very little regulation and it makes you see the benefits of regulating things. For example, the real estate industry. Anyone can just decide that they are a realtor as long as they're registered with the FIU and they have a TIN number and their business is registered. That means that you do not have to spend a ton of money to become a realtor. You can also just say you are a realtor and boom, you are in a new career field. Now, why is this bad? That is bad because we have terrible people out there in the industry giving people with integrity a bad name. And this applies to multiple industries in the country of Belize. But like I said, that comes with its pros and cons. Number 7 is bureaucracy, especially with the government. If you need to get any paperwork done, you better have a lot of patience because things are not clear. Many things are subject to the recommendation of X, Y, and Z, maybe a teacher, a minister, or something like that, or to the discretion of said people. But yes, all these letters of recommendations and the discretion of XYZs that are needed greatly slow down your process, and also the lack of transparency greatly slows things down. Number 6, can you adapt to our culture? Things move at a lot slower pace here in Belize than they do in any other country. And like I said, things are not straightforward. Information is not always on the internet. Information tends to be outdated. Sometimes a person working in one field is like go, and all of a sudden this new person is giving you completely different information. I guess that's more bureaucratical, but we also have very few people with skilled trade in any given area, which means that they get a lot of demand because, you know, they are one of the few people in this trade. Let's say like a mechanic in an area or something, right? Maybe only 2 people are excellent at fixing transmissions. Then you will be waiting a very long time to get your transmission fixed. That's just one example. So just be prepared to adapt to the culture. We do have a few hustlers here and there too, like, you know, in every location. But yeah, things move at a very slow pace. They're not as transparent as you would like them to be. And we have our fair share of hustlers here. Number 4 is convenience. We do not have Amazon. We have no overnight shipping. We also have a very limited variety of anything. For example, if you want bed sheets, you're probably better off having someone sew these bed sheets of your dreams versus hoping to find it in the grocery store, which is probably where you'll find bed sheets. Or Marab. Marab is one of the few department stores that we do have in Belize. But apart from that, if you want to order your preferred items in the US, you can send these items to a shipping company and these items will get here in approximately 30 days. So do not expect any overnight shipping, all right? Or any large variety of anything. But I will say Belize has such a simplified lifestyle that when you don't have these things, most of the times you forget they exist. So, number 3, a lot of times when expats move to Belize, they need to reestablish a new purpose because their way of life in Belize tends to be completely different from their way of life back home. For example, they're going to find themselves with a lot more free time than they're used to. This means that they need to find meaningful things to occupy their day. You need to find a hobby, basically, right? And a lot of times people don't find this hobby and they become consumed by a party lifestyle or by boredom or something that is just not bringing any added value or meaning to them. And they end up returning to the US where they maybe have some family members, have some grandkids, or have some type of job to be working in again. So be sure that when you move here, it fits the new lifestyle that you're looking for. Maybe you're someone who truly enjoys fishing. Now you can spend every day fishing. If you're someone who enjoys hunting and hiking, then Belize is probably the perfect place for you. If you are someone who loves a small community and loves having people over and visiting your neighbors, Belize is the place for you. So just think about whether or not you have a strong enough purpose to keep yourself busy in Belize before moving here. Number 2, I guess this ties into bureaucracy and way of life, but things here are very slow. I mean, it's even in Keycocker's motto. It's go slow. 2 cemeteries, 1 hospital, go slow. When someone says they're gonna show up to work tomorrow to fix your refrigerator, it's safe to assume they will probably show up a week later. If your golf cart is broken, like my one is, it will probably stay at the mechanic shop for a month. Belize does have a lax way of living, and it's a good thing and a bad thing because you also find yourself living more in the moment, but you have to take the bad that comes with it, which is that you will be waiting a while for things to get done. And the number one reason why you shouldn't move here, many people cannot adjust to the food. In Belize, we love our carbs, okay? Fried jacks, love. Rice and beans, love. Flour tortilla, love. Pupusas, love. Bread, love. Burritos, tacos, anything with carbs, we absolutely love it. While we do have a ton of fresh vegetables, a Belizean dish is usually carb intensive. So if you don't mind that, you're good to go. We also love pepper on our food. Marie Sharp is our staple pepper, so I don't know. Hopefully you don't mind that either. We don't have any acai bowls. Many Belizeans have never even heard that term before. But we do have other awesome things, like we have fresh coconuts that they would chop for you. Fresh coconut water. Vegetables that do not have that spray thingy to make it, I don't know. Most of our food is organic. So while us Belizeans prefer our carb-intensive foods, you can still find what you're looking for. It's just not as common at restaurants or fast food
Okay.
areas here in Belize. And we love Coca-Cola. It's very nice and gassy here in Belize, unlike the US where it tastes more like a flat sugar syrup. Because our sugar comes from the sugarcane factory in Orange Walk. Big up to Sugar City. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching my video. If you
Okay, I liked her video, but I am hungry as fuck. So cool. No sea snakes. What?
I mean, you say
Okay,
you're
hold
not
on.
sure how
I'll be right back.
closely
Have to
they're
go pee.
working together on this, but today we heard that the United States plans on sending a terminal high altitude area defense system to Israel, along with troops needed to operate it, which could be up to 100 boots on the ground, essentially. And this comes despite Iran warning the U.S. to keep its forces out of Israel. What did you make of this move? Isn't this really just going to escalate tensions in the Middle East, which the United States says it doesn't want?
Well, the THAAD system is very sophisticated. I imagine if the THAAD was already deployed, this attack today would have been stopped before it hit.
Would it have
Bien
though?
Min.
Would it have though? I thought the whole idea behind these drones, these small drones, is the fact that they operated very low on the ground, and it was very hard for more sophisticated systems to detect them.
Well, yes, but the THAAD system can get both low and high attacks. And even though it's a theater high altitude air defense system, the fact is, I think they would get it right from the back. But you're right that the low altitude basically is one way to get around even the best systems, whether it's THAAD or Iron Dome. But I think the most significant thing is putting 100 American boots on the ground. What happens now if an American gets killed?
Well, that's the worry, isn't it? I mean, it makes the United States now a target, does it not?
It does, and it also makes them really in league with Israel, even though they've objected to a lot of the policies that they've had lately. One can only hope as a result of this today, Israel will be willing to settle the war in Gaza or come to an agreement, which Hezbollah said then they will stop the attacks if that happens.
Okay, I appreciate your time and your perspective. Lawrence Cobb, former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Defense, speaking to us there from Washington, D.C. Now, I just want to bring you some of the latest pictures that are coming in to us. This is the Israeli port city of Haifa. We are hearing at least 6 explosions have been heard as projectiles could be seen flying through the sky. Of course, that attack that we've been reporting on this evening was not too far from the city of Haifa. Let's go to our correspondent, Noor Odeh. She is in Amman. Noor, anything more you can tell us about this latest incident, these pictures that we are seeing of these explosions, projectile explosions around the port city of Haifa?
Well, what we do know is that sirens did go off in Haifa. We also received a statement from the Israeli army, who has yet to comment on the deadly drone attack, but they did say that sirens are there and there are attempts at interception. Media reports talk about 6 to 7 explosions heard in Haifa. No other details yet, but it seems if this was a rocket attack, that someone is taunting the Israeli army. Hours, less than 4 hours after that drone attack, more explosions, more rockets reaching Haifa tonight as well.
Keto Tower
Okay,
ASXGS
thank you. As soon as we
runway
have
36
any
ready
more
for takeoff.
information, or
Departure
indeed
out.
you do, we will
SXGS cleared for
return
takeoff.
back to you.
Runway
Noor
30.
Odeh there for us in Amman. The UN chief says a breach by the Israeli military could constitute a war crime. It comes after the UN mission in Lebanon said Israeli tanks destroyed the main gate of its position in the south and fired several rounds. Antonio Guterres has called all parties to avoid action that puts peacekeepers at risk. This is the latest Israeli attack on peacekeepers in the region. On Thursday, 2 UN peacekeepers were injured when an Israeli tank fired on an observation tower in the mission's headquarters in Nakura. Israeli forces also hit other UN positions in the area.
He won.
Well, in a statement released by
But they-
UNIFIL, the organization said, "We remind the IDF and all actors of their obligations to ensure the safety and security of UN personnel and property." Went on to say, breaching and entering a UN position is a further flagrant violation of international law, and any deliberate attack on peacekeepers is a grave violation of international humanitarian law. We have requested an explanation from the IDF for these shocking violations. Now, that breach comes after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu urged the United Nations Secretary General to evacuate the UNIFIL peacekeeping force from combat areas in Lebanon. He warned that their presence in the area made them, in his words, hostages of Hezbollah.
I want to address the Secretary General of the United Nations directly. It's time to withdraw UNIFIL forces from Hezbollah strongholds and combat zones. The Israeli Defense Forces have requested this repeatedly and faced rejection repeatedly, a rejection entirely aimed at providing a human shield for Hezbollah terrorists. Your refusal to withdraw UNIFIL forces makes them hostages of Hezbollah. This also endangers them, as well as the lives of our soldiers.
Don't sink, don't sink.
Well, Israel has demanded the residents of 20 towns and villages in southern Lebanon move north of the Awali River. It comes as Israel's military expanded its bombing campaign, targeting at least 3 areas outside traditional Hezbollah strongholds. The town of Deir Bila in northern Lebanon was attacked for the first time since hostilities escalated. Meanwhile, in southern Lebanon, there's been widespread destruction in Nabatea after an Israeli airstrike hit a market there. First responders say that a fire broke out after the attack, stopping them from reaching the scene. At least 8 people were injured. Nabatea has come under several Israeli attacks since cross-border hostilities escalated. Still ahead on Al Jazeera, Israel targets northern Gaza again, hitting a school in Jabalia. 300 people have been killed in 9 days of an Israeli siege on the refugee camp.
Immigration, populism, and the far right.
We had evidence of communalism in other parts of the country. We had sectarianism at the general election just a month before.
In your opinion,
with independent,
this is your opinion.
Mehdi Hassan
Ooh,
goes head-to-head
Mehdi
with
Hassan.
British author and commentator Matthew Goodwin.
You wrote about the guy accused of murdering these 3 little girls, that he was the son of immigrants. This kid was a Brit, is a Brit, or is he not a Brit to you?
It depends how you define national identity.
Wow, so am I not a Brit?
Head-to-head on Al Jazeera.
How can these democratic nations justify this kind of behavior?
And there is collateral damage. There's collateral damage. That's war.
That reality is leading to what we're seeing now on the ground.
Allow me to push back for a moment. Is the U.S.'s continued support for Israel affecting its global standing?
From the US elections to the escalating conflict in the Middle East, Upfront returns for a new season, setting the stage for serious debate. Upfront with Mark Lamont Hill on Al Jazeera.
A showcase of the best documentary films from across the network on Al Jazeera.
Watching Al Jazeera, reminder of our top stories this hour. Israeli media reporting that 3 people have been killed and at least 67 injured following
3
a
people,
drone
huh?
strike on the northern Israeli town of Binyamina. Israel's air defense systems failed to detect the drone, and the army says it's investigating why sirens were not activated. The Pentagon has confirmed that Joe Biden has approved the deployment of a missile defense system to Israel to protect against any Iranian threats. American troops will also be deployed to operate the system known as THAAD. At least 18 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli artillery shelling on a school in central Gaza. The facility northwest of Al-Nusayrat was sheltering displaced people when the attack happened late on Sunday night. 13 of the victims have been transferred to Al-Auda Hospital, while 5 were moved to Al-Aqsa Hospital. At the same time, Israel is yet again targeting schools sheltering displaced people in northern Gaza. At least 2 people were killed, several others wounded in a strike on Al-Fallujah school in Jabalia. The injured have been taken to Kamal Adwan Hospital, even though doctors there are trying to evacuate
Dude, I'm
patients
losing altitude.
following demands
This
from
game is
the
hard.
Israeli army for people to leave or face being bombed.
What is happening is a process of attrition, a siege and artillery shelling. Tanks are present and the occupation forces are stationed at the walls of these schools. They are surrounding Shadi Abu Ghazala School, Al-Fallujah School and Hafsa bint Omar Government School. The army is now at the rear walls of these schools. We hope the world intervenes to lift the siege on Jabalia camp, find solutions for the wounded and provide the necessary medical supplies to these injured people.
A group of children who were playing outside near Al-Shati refugee camp have been killed in an Israeli airstrike. The camp is west of Gaza City in northern Gaza. Emergency services have taken the 6 dead and wounded to Al-Ali Hospital. In Kadira reports from Deir al-Balah.
The Israeli assault on Jabalia on the northern Gaza Strip continues for 9 days now. For more than 9 days, there has been constant Israeli airstrikes, Israeli artillery shelling, and also quadcopters everywhere. For 9 days now, Palestinians there do not have any food, any water, or any medicine. According to the ICRC and the PCRS, they're saying that they're receiving a lot of appeals from Palestinian citizens from those areas, asking them to secure their protection and also to give them free access and secure access to leave their houses to a safe place. But at the end of the day, those teams were unable to reach those families because the Israeli forces are targeting anyone who's trying to rescue or help any other Palestinians. Now, as far as we know, that the telecommunications in the northern Gaza Strip is very weak. We lost connection with our colleagues there, but according to Palestinians, they say
Crater
that
Lake.
even if they leave the area, and even if they leave Jabalia, there's no guarantee that they're going to be safe, because Israel is also trying to empty the northern Gaza Strip. But after they mentioned and they announced the evacuation orders, Palestinians are still being targeted. So most of the families decided to stay in their houses because they believe it's also not safe to escape these Israeli airstrikes. Hind Al-Khudari, Al Jazeera, Al-Aqsa Hospital, Gaza Dar al-Balah.
Rania Abu Hamida has been forced to flee from Jabalia further north to Beit Lahia with 6 members of her family. Home has been destroyed and her father was shot and killed while trying to get bread. Here is her story.
For a year since the war started, I was displaced to Al Yaman Al Said Hospital in Jabalia. Over this year, I have lived through very hard and difficult days, endured starvation, killing and genocide. I would see a lot of dead bodies everywhere. During this year, I witnessed a genocide against all residents and displaced people in this hospital, including my father, whom the Zionist occupation shot dead because he was trying to get a piece of
Disgusting.
bread for my little 2-year-old brother, Muhammad. The Israeli occupation doesn't allow us to leave our homes, not even look outside the windows. They also denies entry of humanitarian aid, including food items, medical supplies and medicines. They threatened all hospitals in the northern Gaza Strip, the Indonesian, Al-Auda and Kamal Adwan hospitals, 2 of which are out of service. Kamal Adwan is the only hospital that still functions, but is on the brink of going out of service in a few days. Then there will be neither hospitals nor medical supplies to treat the injured and the wounded in the northern Gaza Strip, especially in Beit Lahia, Beit Hanun and Jabalia camp. The Israeli occupation and their vehicles are always in close proximity. We can't move because any object that moves would be directly and intensely fired at.
Okay, that's it for me, Marlene Said. Lots more information on our website, aljazeera.com. Inside Story coming up next.
God damn it. Okay, I gotta go. I'm gonna go get some food. I'll be right back.